So, hello and welcome to the Safer Tomorrow podcast, your resource for crime and violence reduction strategies and for creating a more peaceful society. I am Dr. Joe. I am a community social work educator and a criminal justice researcher, and I am extremely passionate about finding and collating and bringing stories, strategies, and support for you to be more effective in crime and violence reduction. Today, I have Takita Chance Wilson with me, and I'm so excited. I met her some years before, and she has done so much work in this area. She is a development practitioner, and I'm really going to ask her to tell us some more about herself. She is the executive director of Barita Foundation, and I am so privileged that she has really joined us on this episode. So hello, Takita.
Hi, Joe, Dr. Joe. How are you doing?
I am well, and I'm just so
Awesome.
grateful that you've decided to join us. So, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are? Who is Mrs. Chance Williams, and how did you really become a development practitioner?
Great. Well, let me congratulate you on this podcast. And thanks for the invitation to come and share. I think it's just really remarkable that, you're able to pull together the persons who you have to come and to share their insights and to, just to hopefully inspire others to join the efforts of creating a safer tomorrow. Yeah. So congrats on that. I'm excited to be here and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yes.
Um, that said, I've been a development practitioner by many names. I think this career is so dynamic and it's ever evolving. And that is also something that I find very interesting. And it should be exciting for people who are studying, young people who are studying, and not so young people who are studying and are looking for an area where they can enter a career that allows them to serve others and develop and build better and safer tomorrows, right?
Mm.
So I started out, I studied sociology and psychology in university. And I encourage everyone to, always try to do some kind of social science studies because it really prepares you to have an understanding and appreciation for how society works. And therefore, it helps to build your resilience to function in the workplace and so on. And so, in describing who I am, I really have to share, just where my passion lies in terms of sociology and psychology, and really knowing knowing how society works and helping me to situate myself within society so that I can be of service, not just to self, but to others as well. And I am, like I said, very passionate about that and really just enjoy the work that I do and the benefits that arise from the work. And that really lies in seeing people become their best selves or better selves and are open to growing and developing. And that helps me to feel a sense of satisfaction and helps to define who I am. And of course, I'm a mommy. I'm, my babies are my absolute everything. Family means everything to me. And I want to create a better future for them.
For them. All right, thank you so much. So, could you tell us a little bit about Barita Foundation and the work that it does?
All right, Dr. Joe. So, I every organization, right, or company really has a responsibility to contribute to the development of communities and to support nation building and really addressing the gaps that exist in society. And so Barita Foundation is the cornerstone group, cornerstone Barita companies avenue through which this contribution is made in building and developing communities and contributing to nation building. So we're obviously the charitable arm, the corporate social responsibility arm, but the bigger picture really is that vehicle, serving as that vehicle through which the company can make contributions to our society.
Mhm. So, what is some of the work that it does? Services. What are some of the initiatives that Barita Foundation does and carries out?
All right, so we focus. We'd love to do everything, right? Because there are so many in society, so many gaps exist. But we really wanted to align the work that we do with the work of our core business, our parent company, as well as to really honor because Barita Foundation was rebranded just very recently, less than 2 years ago, in order that we could widen our scope and grow, and as the company itself, our parent company, grew. And so we we decided to focus in three main areas: education and youth development, um, entrepreneurship, and health and well-being. And these three areas, like I said, are very important to the company, to the business, and certainly to our communities that we serve. And we are carrying on the tradition of focusing on education, building out on the early childhood support that we would have areas that would have worked in before, and really now expanding to include other levels of education.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I may, so under education and youth development pillar, we are working for the past since 2004, when Mrs. Rita Humphreys Lewin established the foundation. Their main focus was on early childhood development. So there was a strong numeracy and literacy program that they built out in um, some over the years, a total of about 30 or so early child institutions. And that program involved obviously developing numeracy and literacy skills in children, but it was all encompassing and holistic, in that they also worked with the teachers, training the teachers to make it a sustainable intervention. So they trained the teachers so that they could deliver even after, the foundation team would have left, those numeracy and literacy skills. And of course, working with the parents as well, through the social workers, to develop their competence and their capacity as parents, so that they could become better parents, in order to guide and raise their children. And then now we've expanded to include a scholarship program for high school and tertiary students. And we have one scholarship in particular that's really focused on teachers of early childhood education, so teachers in training. And that one is named in honor of Mrs. Rita Humphreys Lewin. And that's our premier scholarship. And then, of course, we engage in other education support, creating greater access, helping to create greater access through devices and financial support for the schools, etc. And our youth development component obviously ties into that, our training and skills training and psychosocial support. And then on entrepreneurship obviously aligns with our business, or the company's core business, our parent company's core business, training and developing persons um, to build businesses and enterprises, and to develop their skill sets. And of course, health and well-being. Not sure who said it. Maybe you would, as an academic, would recall better than I would. But the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation,
Mhm.
and so we think it's important that we also pay attention to health. A lot of that is done through our charitable giving, but we really want for persons to take a holistic approach to health. So mental health, physical health, and of course financial health. So all of that is tied in, and is usually forms a part of our financial literacy thrust and work that we do as well. So in a nutshell, that is some of the work that we've been doing.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So,
No
how
problem.
does Barita see themselves using these services to contribute to crime and violence reduction?
So, but Joe, crime and violence is everybody's business, right?
Hmm.
Because we need a safe and secure society in order for us to thrive. Period. And so we all that we do is our vision really speaks to creating having especially young people having equitable access to resources, so that they can get an education and so they can become their best selves, and really contributing to um, the whole the holistic development of our society. And that involves obviously people having the freedom to move around and feeling safe and secure. And in order to do that, in order for the foundation to function, for us to do our work, obviously the business has to do well. And this is something I think businesses have to recognize, that you can only thrive and do well again if we are operating in a safe and secure environment. Where levels of crime are low, or next to minimal, or next to none, right? And so we felt it was important. I felt it was important um, to incorporate specifically um, crime and violence reduction in our interventions, because a lot of the people who really needed, or young people who need that sense of um, empowerment, who really needed to be empowered, are from communities where that are affected heavily by crime and violence. And so in order to reach them, we would have to be involved in helping to address the issue of crime and violence. And so it led to a natural progression, right? So it meant we had to endeavor to help to address crime and violence reduction, in order that we can be able to reach our young people, to empower them so that they can be educated and trained, and their skills developed, so that they can become their best selves, and they can help to work towards a future that I think we all aspire to have, or should all aspire to have.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of Barito goes into communities and works with persons through these initiatives to just ensure that they're equipped and their potential is developed so that they don't get involved in criminal activities. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. Mhm.
What could you tell us a little bit about some of the programs, the underground initiatives that Barita has? So you told us, about the charitable giving and the
Mhm.
training. I mean, you have quite a breadth of services here.
For
So could
sure.
you tell us some of those that particularly focus on perhaps youth who are, who may get involved in criminal activities?
Sure. So really, uh, our program. Let me talk about a little bit about our program design, yes, and what drives our work, as well as what is that framework that we are guided by. Um, our history has served in us determining our path. And so the work over the years since 2004 that have been done in the early childhood institutions, working with the children, working with the parents, working with teachers, has informed our strategy.
Mhm,
Uh, the what we found is that children learn when they are obviously loved and cared for, but also when their parents are aligned with the messaging and the work that's taking place in school. And then obviously the teachers function better when they are when the parents are in alignment with the work that's taking place in the school, and when they are in a position where they are emotionally and mentally prepared to receive what's being taught, as well as so empowered to provide for themselves and their children. I was taught very early in my social work career, that everyone wants the same thing for themselves and their children. We may go about it differently, but we all want, as every well-thinking person, right? For the most part, we all want to feel safe and secure. We all want to be able to provide for ourselves and our children, because we have that sense of responsibility as parents to protect our children, provide for them, and to set them up for the best future. And that is no different in any community.
And I just really want to underscore that point, because that point is very important. Because I think when we think about persons living within urban communities, inner city communities, sometimes we think of them as so different from ourselves. And, we observe how they may operate, and we assess and perhaps judge them, believing that they want something completely different from their children, or they don't care. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it is the community circumstances that inform what you believe that you can do, or what you actually can do. And
Absolutely.
so I just really wanted to underscore that point, because I think it is key in terms of our own mindset as we think about how can we get involved, and what does it actually take to reduce crime and violence in Jamaica and beyond.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, very important point, that we know that we are no different except for our circumstances and the opportunities that have been presented to us. Because if some persons who are from the other side of town, if you were born in on the other side, you would have operated no differently. And so that is very important, I believe. And that has been something that I've always had in the back of my mind and the forefront of my mind, as I've walked through this career. But yes, so to your question in terms of our approach, and I was discussing the sort of framework that has been guiding our work. And so we take the learnings from the early childhood interventions that were done over the years, and in seeking to grow and expand how we impact our communities. Um, you draw from the experts and not recreate the wheel, right? And so protective factors we found really help to bring people in the first place, because people are hurting, and hurt people, they say hurt people, yes. And so the counseling, the parental support, the strengthening of bonds among parents and within communities and youth, we find that that really gets persons to sort of drop this sort of uh, facade that they have, or this sort of drop their guard, let their guards on a bit, and be open to an
Mm,
intervention in the first place, knowing that someone cares, and really getting to the core of why you do what you do, and that there are alternatives, and we are here to, someone is here to work with you to work through this. So those protective factors of counseling, and really strengthening bonds and so on, is one of the first things that we try to look at. Obviously, conflict resolution, because we engage the experts who can do the mediation, and who can help to sort of break down the barriers
mm,
and get people to start talking, um, so that a conversation a
mm.
conversation can happen, and people can understand, or recognize that, get to the root of what is causing a conflict in the first place.
Yeah.
And then I'd say third, the or financial literacy sessions have really been very engaging. We found very engaging, especially with our young people, our youth, because that's another thing that most people want, whether you want to agree, you want to admit it or not. People want to be able to earn so that they can feel independent, be independent, and provide for themselves and their families. And so we found that financial literacy, exposure to financial literacy, has been a good vehicle, a good way for us to really engage with youth, and for them to and doing it in a wholesome way, but also in a way that gets them to understand, how money works, and how money works not just in their setting, but also in a wider setting, and to know that they can build wealth, because wealth is defined in different ways, right? I remember I spoke earlier about holistic a holistic approach to mental, physical, and financial health, and to allow persons to start defining what they would describe as wealth, and how,
Mhm.
and having a roadmap to achieving that, and understanding how to access, how you can gain access to funds if you have a small business and that kind of thing, and starting up a business, just learning about the different tenets of banking, and managing your budgeting and managing your finances, and working and saving, delayed gratification, those kinds of things, and how that can benefit you and your children in the long run, and creating kind of generation wealth. And again, wealth looks different for everyone. So those three areas really guide our work when we're doing our interventions. Again, the protective factors, really making people feel safe, and building that trust. And then obviously you have to address the elephants in the room, the conflict resolution. And then finally, very important to us is our financial literacy, as we seek to build and support holistic health.
Yeah, and I mean these services are so important because, and sometimes we take them for granted. We take for granted how we have grown, and the different spaces that we are in have taught us bits and pieces of what you are now giving concentrated training about. And some of the communities where I'm sure these are delivered, you know, they don't necessarily have the resources, and some of the socializing institutions like school, right? The schools are overburdened, and they don't necessarily have the
Yeah.
resources to provide the type of education. And when we talk about education, we don't just mean math and English, but that holistic education, as you were talking about, that is needed to create the type of citizen that can be productive, responsible, active, make correct decisions, in different situations, and to understand how to manage conflict. And the truth is, even, I mean, despite our educational background and some of the things we believe about ourselves, not all of us are able to manage conflict well anyway.
No, not at all.
you know it's just some of what informs what we don't do is how we have been socialized. And as you said earlier, some persons have actually seen and experienced a lot of violence, and violence is the way that they resolve conflict. And so, what's that popular saying? Children live what they
Live
learn.
what they learn. Yes,
Yes. And so I
so
think,
true.
one of the things that we have to remember that's important for us is, by the time someone reaches, youth status, 15, 29, and then adult status, they were actually coming from being a child where they were just absorbing what they learned. And if we are not taught how to make certain types of decisions, you know, it doesn't all necessarily come naturally. And so we just won't know how to make these decisions that will benefit our life and benefit the rest of society.
So true, so true. Children do live what they learn, and which is why early childhood education is really just so critical. It's a foundation. If the house is not built on a strong foundation, it will crumble. The least bit of wind will blow it down, and that affects uh, how decision making, and how a child, if the foundation is not laid
Mhm.
sufficiently and effectively laid, then learning doesn't take place in the way that it should. Decision making doesn't happen, as wisely as it should. And you're working at correcting, right, versus enhancing and building. And so, we feel very strongly about really tackling the issues, and from the early childhood level, by my grandmother told me prevention is better than cure.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely correct, because then you are not facing the problems down the line, but there's foresight, and you prepare for it. And so that by the time the children get to a certain age, they're thinkers,
Mhm.
and they make decisions based on careful thought, versus following someone else, or not pausing sufficiently before acting. So, and even with crime and with youth crime prevention, again, you really want, so you can tackle it from different angles. Yes. And I think as practitioners, so we know that that is the case. So there is no prescriptive method. There is no set way of doing doing what we do, you constantly have to evolve because the landscape changes, the issues change, and so you have to constantly be working at ensuring that you stay on top of what's going on so that you can be sufficient, be adequately prepared to treat with things as they come. And again, you want thinkers who will recognize when someone is coming in to support and to contribute to development versus to add to your problems and to tear you down.
Yeah. And I mean, what's important, and one of the components that you spoke about is that aspect of care. The truth is, no matter the kind of environmental, technological changes that occur, people just
Mhm.
want to know that they're valued, and valued for who they are, and not dictated by their circumstances. And one of the things that you said that I appreciate is just how Barita Foundation learned. And so based on what you learned, you expanded your reach. So based on what you were saying, is that you were focused initially on, teaching, training. But now it sounds as though it has expanded to a kind of community intervention approach where you include some of the training, but also you're able to serve in a more holistic way. And so that's so important for organizations to be able to reflect on the interventions that they are implementing, and then to pivot or change or expand the scope of what they're doing to be more effective. So can you tell us about what would you consider as a successful project, if you could describe, some of the successes that you've had?
Wow, I mean, so in development, we're taught that you really ought to be working yourself out of a job, but then
Mhm.
the reality is that when society is going to have issues and challenges because it's dynamic and um, things are ever changing and evolving, and not always positively so. But we're very proud of everything that we've done in terms of the work working with our communities and stuff. But I have to again go back to the work where the foundation was laid with our early childhood programs, being able to reach thousands of children, teachers and parents, and really laying that strong foundation that we and establishing these relationships in communities, because these schools are all in underserved communities, right? And so
Mhm.
really establishing ourselves as an ally and as a support in those communities has been tremendous in us coming in to do more work, right? But if I were to single out a project, what stands out to me, what is one that's a little more immediate, and that is a project that we did in collaboration with FHI 360,
Mhm.
USAID funded project. It was called Making Ends Meet. And I go back to the learning again. So one of the things that we learned as an organization was that because everybody wants the same thing for their children, and one of them is to provide. When we did all that work, all that emotional and psychosocial work, that parents still had bread and butter issues, right? And they still had to put food on the table. And so this is where skills training and entrepreneurship support comes in. And so on the Making Ends Meet, as a project suggests, as a name suggests, we really were working with at-risk youth from about 3 or so communities who were um, medium to high risk. And so what that means, for anyone who might be listening or watching, is that they were either already involved in criminal activity or are likely, very likely to become involved based on their level of exposure and risk. So we had the program ends with 22 participants. We had targeted 20 participants, and you and I know that when you end up with very rarely do you end up with all the participants that you started with, much more to end up with, more. And so
Yes.
two may seem like a minimal number, but it's pretty significant.
In our world, it is definitely significant.
Definitely significant, yes. And so the framework that that's kind of guided our work or strategy in working with youth in terms of the protective factors, the conflict resolution, and the financial literacy those were employed strongly in working with these young men and women, and they we started out with the psychosocial support again to lay a foundation, a strong foundation for the project. And projects are short, so you don't achieve behavior change in 6 to 9 months, right? It's going to take a longer time. Um, I, I mean, I've been trying to eat healthy for 40 years now, and I can't. So I don't expect someone to change completely in 9 months, 6 to 9 months, right? But at the same time, they've been exposed to the training. They've been exposed. They've unearthed a lot of the emotions that they've had that would have led them to behave in a particular way, and so now they know, they have a better understanding and appreciation for taking a decision, a right decision versus a wrong decision, and that's a start and a huge jump from where they were. And so they received the psychosocial intervention support, and some continue to receive counseling even after. But they also were able to be trained, skills training. They receive skills training, as well as for those who, to include entrepreneurship training, right? For
Mm-hmm.
those who already were making what little ends they had meet. They now learn the skills to, budget and to different skills that are really vital to surviving as a small entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, a small enterprise. And some persons received seed funding to either, build, expand, and build out their enterprise, or to start something. And it's very simple things. Some people sometimes say, oh, you may assume you need millions of dollars. Nobody received millions of dollars, but yet it was just as impactful. The enterprises range from, a jerk pan with the different things that are needed, to someone who's selling hair products on their veranda. And
Mm-hmm.
the important thing again is the mindset, the shift in the mindset, that okay, I can do this, but also that I am more than my circumstances. I am more than, what people label me to be because I live in a particular space in a community, or because I got pregnant at 14 or 15. I want to do better for myself, not just for myself, but for my community. I want to be an example for my child, sorry, but I also want to be an example for my community. And I think just the anecdotal feedback that we got was great. But then when you really look into the actual evaluation of the project, and you recognize just how, again, because more persons finished, we had more persons finishing than number of participants who were targeting. And to see the change in, pre-test versus a post-test, to see that there were their thought processes had opened up, and really were going in a more positive direction. It really it warmed my heart. But I think as practitioners, we really were moved that we were able to achieve that level of what I would describe as success,
Mm-hmm.
because they had grown so much in a short time. And would just really love to see more of that, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Could you share some of the anecdotal responses? What were their, what was their feedback? What did they
you know,
say?
so yeah, and I do have their permission to share, because that's also important, right? It's
Yes,
their
it
story
is.
to tell, and so we do have their permission to share. There's one that stood out at the graduation, where a young lady, she said that before the program, before the project, she used to curse out her bad words. And since the project, she stopped, she'll breathe, and she writes down, she'll write her thoughts down before she expresses them, kind of thing. And she's setting a better example for her daughter, who she
Mm-hmm.
had when she was just a teenager, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's another one with a young man who he he had thoughts of just really evil thoughts, right? Because he felt, he was upset with the world. The world had done him wrong, and there was just no point in living. And now he recognizes that just people who didn't even know him cared enough to come and want to work with him. And even though he was reluctant and resisting, we just never stopped. And we having the right people on the team is so important, because I think all these projects need a social worker, right? Because a psychologist, yes, but a social worker who will go down the trenches and who will really have the time for the one-on-ones, because no two cases are the same, right? And so it was important that we had someone like that, and they really developed a rapport and were able to get practical, real life tools for them to use. And so he spoke about, using the tools, the counting and the log to, write down his thoughts and that kind of thing. And then there was another person who, it appeared might have been suicidal because of all the problems and the issues and so on, and was in and out of juvenile facilities and stuff. And she now is doing much better. Yeah, so she's hopeful about the future. She's looking forward to what is to come next, and also just using what was good for me to hear and to see was them speaking about the tools that they learned, um, and being in a position now where they're going to draw on those tools when they're faced with a position where, when they're put in a position where they would have responded differently in the past prior to exposure to the project. And then finally, there's a young man who was one of the older, on the higher end of the age, uh, youth age, right? And he actually wants to know the work in his community. Before he was silent, yes, and now he wants to take as well some of the tools, because people in the community started to observe the change in him. And he was able to say, well, I passed this program and these are some things I'm learning. So he was taking some of what he was learning and sharing it with the guys on the corner. And then he is now in a place where he wants to go into community work, right? Going to development work. And if that's not a win, I don't know what is.
Thank you. Though, when I'm listening to you, I mean, one, it just reminds me first that, as you said, people are hurting, and just a myriad of issues and challenges that, persons are living with, and they may not have access to help. But to me, one of the main tools for change are people, like individuals. You talk about those who are serving, the social workers and the other workers that you had serving, this group of young people, and how important it was for them to be persistent in order to reach one of the young people. And so, from as we're interacting, we can say, well, okay, he's resistant, him don't business, him don't care, and we can give up, right? But sometimes persistence is what is important to actually get persons engaged, and it is the people who help to get persons engaged. And once they're engaged, then we can give them the tools and the strategies that they need to enhance their lives and deal with some of the issues that they are dealing with and have, and meet their own needs. And then I love that you went beyond it. This last gentleman, who he didn't now just have a new mindset, he didn't just have the tool sets, but he now wanted to become, and perhaps was
Yes,
already a leader,
yes,
because even just being able to share it with other people within his own space and his own network and his friends, demonstrated, or would demonstrate leadership qualities and that area. And so I think, as we do this type of community work, these are areas that are very important for us. One, to see the person as the main tool. I would say one of the most critical tools in change, providing very clear tools and strategies, which is what I hear you say, that people believe that they can implement, is achievable for them. And then also the opportunity to recognize that I am a leader and I can also now make an impact, because that is how we can spread the word, create a greater impact when persons who have been impacted now go and impact. And another thing that you said is my favorite example as well regarding behavior change, because when we think about persons who are involved in violence, involved in gangs, involved in many of these areas that we're trying to reduce, is that we think, what, like they should change right now, like today, you implement
Not
a program,
possible.
you give them some skills, and what is taking them so long? And I mean, from the outside, you want it to change because, well, there's a lot of fear, and you have all of those issues surrounding it. But when we think about ourselves and how challenging it is to change behaviors that we have been practicing from childhood, and it is not because you don't want to, it's just because it is hard to move yourself away from habits that you created, and those habits are supported by mindsets, and those mindsets are supported by the experiences that you have had
And the
growing up,
environment as well, and the
and the environment.
environment, right?
Exactly.
Because people you train, you have all these programs, and I know there's a lot of debates around social intervention programs and so on. No, and I won't get into that, but I think one of the things we have to be very mindful of is that we persons are trained, they're exposed to a different environment, they're exposed to so much that really are um, critical and important elements of change, or that should inspire change. But then we send people back to, or young people or youth back to the communities, yeah. And remember, we don't take out the entire community and train them and expose them to alternative means, right? So when we take 100 young men out of and women out of our community, and then you send them and you give them, do all the work with them, and then you send them back. Um, you and I are not there every day with them, Joe. We're not. We're not living in their homes. We're not having a conversation. We're not sitting together in the same building or in the same office every day. So the influence, the sphere of influence changes once they go back. And the reality is that we will lose some of our young people that way, because we're constantly talking to the preaching to the converted, and when we do all the work, they're still going back, and they're not the on the ground realities don't change. So we have to be patient with them. We have to be patient with the process, because it's so multifaceted.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
so multifaceted. But as I always share and say, and with every team that I work with, is that things may appear to you put all this work in, and then you feel discouraged if you lose one person, or somebody goes back, and the the recidivism is high, right?
Mhm.
um, but think about if we were not doing the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
So we may win some and we may lose some, but let us really focus on winning as many as we can, and think about that ripple effect. What
Mhm.
that one person, that one guy, that one young man who wants to go into community development work, all right? Think
Mhm.
about how many lives he'll change, and how that will impact his community and possibly impact Jamaica. And let's focus on that, right? I'm encouraged by that and try to do more of that. And not be distracted or discouraged by how many more persons we will lose, or how much higher the crime rate goes. That's important, and yes, we have to do that, but we also have to amplify the
Yeah.
successes. Yeah, we have to
That's a
amplify the
very important.
successes. Yeah,
That is
yeah.
a very important point, because doing community work, it's very challenging when you lose
Mm.
somebody, and
It
I
is.
mean, your heart is invested in the work. You maintain your professionalism, but your heart is invested in the work. So when someone leaves or dies, it really is
Mhm.
challenging. And so I think that really is a good point, for those of us who work in the community, that yes, we do have to grieve. We have to grieve the persons who we have lost, but we have to remember that we are making a difference, and each individual's life is important, and so each individual's life that we invest in does have the ability to make larger impacts as well, to remain to just encourage ourselves.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
you
And
spoke
before
about.
you go on, and also when you and I go and talk with a young man or a young woman, I mean, first of all, the language changes so often that I can't keep up, right? And so when you or I go and we talk, we can talk because we you're a doctor, you're educated, you're fine. But when when they're able to hear from one of their own,
Hmm.
and can relate to that person because you have the same background, have the same experiences, but you're moving differently, then maybe it's possible for me too. So there is so much value in, again, celebrating the wins and really amplifying the voices of the people who have managed to make a change in their lives.
And I love that point because I think we need to take more seriously people who have changed their lives. I think there are ways in which we can increase our partnership with them because they have understandings, they have knowledge that we just don't have because we didn't experience the same situation. And you are right. We are all more likely to listen to somebody who we believe has the experiential knowledge about a particular issue. And so I think, as we continue in community work and in different areas, and I think for myself, in terms of one of the areas that I'm studying regarding formerly incarcerated people and people who have been involved in violent offenses, when they change, we should give them the status that allows them to really make a change to a large number of youth, and that includes paying them. um,
Yes, yes.
because we tend to think, okay, yes, now volunteer, but then when they don't have money to feed their families, it means that there's challenges. Okay,
It's a
so
genuine career. Like
yeah,
it's
exactly,
a
it is
genuine
a genuine
career.
career.
Yeah, I learned something recently. Uh, in an interview that President Obama did, and he spoke about the writings, speeches of JFK,
Mm,
and how he spoke to the measurement of GDP, and how you take so many material things into consideration in measuring GDP. Yes, um, and what is not included is what's probably are the things that are probably most important to really a country's growth and development. Things like happiness, things
mm,
like personal security, things like well-being, and some of these things I think since COVID have really come to surface to the fore,
mm.
because mental health, people are having conversations about mental health and so on, and that's important and that's very good. But there's still so much, so far to go. And so when someone hears that you're a social worker or you're a development practitioner, it's oh, that's so lovely. I've always wanted to do that. I love to volunteer. I love to, yes, I do stuff in my church and I do stuff,
Mhm.
I'm in this service club and so on. And I will welcome that and we celebrate that and we love that. But the social work and community development work and development work really requires concentrated study
And skill set.
and that certain skill set, and it is an actual career.
Hmm.
We've come a far way though. I think we had a certain image of a social worker, certainly when probably you and I were studying, or just enter the field. But now it has evolved, and
Hmm.
especially with corporate social responsibility, with
Hmm.
corporate companies now recognizing their role in creating a better society, right? And in measuring not just profits, but that, you also have to consider people and planet. Planet, those things are now being considered. So we've come a far way, and we have to keep at it as practitioners and as people who, who study this area, just to reinforce the messaging, but also to encourage young people to enter these careers that are legitimate careers and not just a nice to do, because
Yes.
society depends on it, and we all have an important role to play.
Yeah, I mean, I 150% agree. And apart from the fact that I'm a social worker, so
Yes,
maybe a little
yes,
bit biased, but I do believe that we are trained, that we have the skill sets to deal with a lot of the social issues that exist within Jamaica and other areas of the society. And so when we truly recognize, social work, being a development practitioner as these as important and significant careers, I believe we may actually have more solutions,
For
and we
sure.
will actually put in place, more social workers, put in place persons who are equipped to deal with the issues, some of the issues that we have. And so I really appreciate, what you said, and I'm 150% there. All right. So, I mean, we're coming to a close, but I would just want to have in mind, what's your, so you spoke about like pre and post tests.
Mhm.
What's your measure of success? How do you, when somebody changes, what does that look like? What do you look out for? What do they
Yeah.
move from, and then what do they, move towards?
Yeah. So obviously, a former boss always told me what gets measured gets done. Yes. And it's so true because you can be working in a vacuum, just working and working and working, and then you're not quite sure, where you're going.
Mhm.
And so for us, what success looks like is an agreed position. Yes. Because as a practitioner on one end, we have our own ideas of what we're hoping to achieve, but that is not valid unless it's mutually agreed upon. Right? And so, for the subject of intervention, they also need to have an input in what it is that they hope to achieve from a process.
Mhm.
And so, success is when we agree on an outcome, on output, and then we achieve that. So, a practical example is if someone wants certification in a skill. So someone is good with hair, for example, and but just does not have any certification that will get them a job in a established salon, or will get them to be able to travel overseas and work as a chef. Um, that is that's a direct output, right? That will lead to desired outcomes. Now, what do the outcomes look like? That person that helps to define the success, right? In terms of success, that means that a person is now has a marketable skill and a certificate that will allow them to get a job, start their own business, earn, support their families, their child or children, earn, um, make a contribution to their community, a positive contribution, and not be involved or be involved or take a path of having a life of crime, and
Mhm.
and where violence is concerned, because they're also exposed to some psychosocial interventions. They address past and current trauma and are able to communicate differently with their spouse
Mhm.
and their children. And so there's a better, more enabling environment for the children to grow in, and the family unit is operating, more on a more healthy basis. So all of that, I said all of that to say, one, it has to be agreed, because we can't dictate it's not a top-down approach. It's a very involved, engaged, and participatory approach. Yes. And two, it's really, once you agree on those outcomes, and the outputs, once you achieve those outputs and the desired outcomes are next in line, and you see the path to achieving those, then the intervention has been successful, because you get what you want, I get what I want, and together we have what we want. And usually that is, empowering people and creating a more enabling environment to grow and to thrive. And that's what we want for our communities. That's what we want. Wouldn't it be fantastic if, our young men and young women could, or children from a very early age, can learn basic numeracy and literacy that will set and lay the foundation for them to learn the other subjects as they go into school, so that you have less behavioral challenges. And at the same time, you're working with parents so that they learn coping skills and that they can better parent. And at the same time, they're able to develop their skills or start the enterprise, identify jobs, work, pay, cover their expenses at home, take care of their families, and have good communication with their spouses and have a better family environment and so on for the children. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yes. And
Yeah,
it really would be. I love the participatory approach. It is not necessarily the approach that I'll take. And so, I think it is so important that you are essentially partnering with individuals to improve their lives, as opposed to telling them what they
yeah,
need to do. And even if we do know, that still we are inviting them into the conversation because it is their life. And what we want to do is to be able to help them to make decisions on their own. So if we're telling them what to do, it is going to reduce the likelihood that they'll be able to, be independent. But as we talk about partners, who does Barita partner with?
ah, good question. So listen, so nobody can do it alone right now. We certainly can't. Everybody's under resourced. And so partnership is extremely important. Our stakeholders are obviously our schools, who we work closely with in the communities, and our parents, and our training institutions, or we recently worked with Exed Community College, for example. Also important is, or obviously, or other CSR partners, NGOs, and so on. Very important, because the reality is that we want to develop communities sustainably, and you do have NGOs who are working in the communities themselves, and so they are very important in the overall process. And so we do partner with NGOs as well, where we can add to their capacity building or helping to better resource them so that they can serve the communities on a day-to-day basis. We do that. Of course, as well, funding, we're very, or funding partners or development partners are also important to us. I spoke earlier today, FHI project, 360 project. Now we are supporting a project in with the Joytown community. Yes. So again, working with partners who are based in communities, as well as working with other external stakeholders, because the reality is that no one entity can do it all, and we certainly are very fully aware of that. And we want to do it in a sustainable way, yes, a way where there will be continuity, and even after a project has ended or a program has ended, that people will be equipped with the knowledge, the know-how, and the tools to continue the work and to go into another community and do it as well. So we're excited for the partnerships that we have and that we will have going into the future, and look forward to really just changing more lives.
Mhm. So, in terms of, I guess, concluding statements, I want to ask, what would you say is that one thing you would want, um, the wider society? People who are looking to change things, people who are maybe not even looking to change things. What would you say to them? That's the first question. And the second one is, how can persons support the work that Barita is doing?
Yeah. You know, so the reality is that not everyone is trying to change the world. And people are entitled to, believe in what they want to believe in and all of that. But I would want to remind everyone that, we all exist in this world together, though apart. And one person's action can significantly affect several people, several persons, yes. And so we really ought not to look at society as us and them, because at some point us becomes them and them becomes us, right? And so we must always be mindful of not just our immediate spaces or immediate environment, but of others as well, whether it be others who are in a more comfortable circumstance, or those who are not. Because again, one can affect and impact the other, if not immediately, further down the line. So if not an individual now, maybe their children later. and at some point, paths cross. And so it's important to be mindful of other people, their positions in life, where they stand, their challenges, their circumstances, and where we can support and where we can make a contribution, that we do that, because it's in the end, it really helps us all. And for those of us who really want to help and who really want to support and who really want to do work and put work in, if you want to choose, development, social work, sociology, whatever it is as a career, go ahead and do that, because we need more of you. And if you just want to volunteer, that's also okay, because there are different ways in which you can volunteer. You can volunteer and you can make a contribution. You can do so financially, obviously, too. There's so many NGOs, there's so many places in need. I mean, you think of like a Red Cross that does so much work, the churches that do so much work in communities. Yes, you want to you want to give where you can, because sometimes people just don't have the time, and we do need other professionals, right? To do the work that they do, so we can do the work that we do. And especially
Mhm.
operating in a corporate company, you're attached to a corporate company, we know that, yes. But if you don't have the time, you can give up your resources. If you want to give up your time, you can also give up your resources. But there are so many organizations that sometimes just need an accountant to help to get their books together, so that they can achieve or acquire charitable status, and make their operations run more smoothly. And or you can give up your physical strength, to help to build somewhere or do something. So there's no shortage of ways for you to give back. The first, there's a quote where volunteers don't have the time, they have the heart. And that is just so true. You just have to step out and ask, and you're not going to be turned down, more than likely. And in terms of with Barita, well, obviously, and this is probably a shameless plug, but in order to do what we do, right, we need the company to make a profit, because we're otherwise fully funded by the company. But I always say to every opportunity I get that when you do business with a company, you want to know that they are mindful of not just making a profit, but that
Mhm.
they're mindful of the communities that they serve, of the clients who they serve, and of the spaces where they operate. And and ask questions, hold them accountable, you know, hold them accountable for it. And where there, in the case of Barita, where there's a foundation, certainly hold us accountable. Follow the work that we do, visit our website, call, ask questions, social media is a place now. So, certainly go to the social media pages and, comment, ask questions, query things, because you want to know how, obviously, how, your the profits are being spent. So that's one way to get involved. And then, of course, always open to ideas. We do, fund small initiatives that partner with persons and entities, so that we can serve in the 3 areas that I spoke to earlier, under our 3 pillars. We'd love to do everything, but we can't. But
Mhm.
certainly education, youth development, entrepreneurship, health and well-being. If there are ideas around how we can serve, and you are operating in a community or in a space where you believe we align, or focus aligns with what is happening, always just open. We're not linear, we're not restrictive. We just really want to help to make a difference, and to make sure that we're serving as best and as efficiently and successfully as we can. So give us a call, visit us on our website, like I said, and certainly follow our social media pages, because we're always updating. And take our ideas as well. If something that we do inspires you and you want to know more, we're willing to share that. We're not going to be selfish about that at all.
Yeah. So thank you. I mean, I really admire your heart, and you're evident and knowledgeable about what you do, and consider a lot of considerations go into, the implementation of the interventions. You truly, yeah, care for the people you serve, and it is
I
evident.
do, we do. Yeah. And I have a
Yeah.
good team. Like, that's So no one person can do it all, right? And I'm
Hmm.
always mindful of like bigging up my team wherever I'm working, whatever I'm doing, because it's one thing to ideate, yes, but if you do not have that support and if you don't have like-minded people working with you, forget about it. You're gonna get nowhere, and that's also very important to always not lose sight of that. The more people you have on board, the better. But if you know anything about, operating in these spaces, you never have a large team, yeah. But, but you want people who really believe in what you're doing, and I think here at the foundation, Barita Foundation, our team truly believes in what we're doing, and for the most part, we're from a development background, but we do also have someone who is from a strong finance background and has experience in that area. I think together we come up with just these wonderful ideas and then execute on them. And at the core, we want to make a change, we want to make a difference, we see where there are opportunities to do so, and we go after them. And we're open to just really sharing our ideas and working with people who are like minded. And I have to big them up for that because we wouldn't have been able to achieve all that we have if we never had all hands on deck. And of course,
Yes.
you have to also big up the people who have the foresight, or corporate leaders who have the foresight and who also have the heart and want to make a difference and choose to incorporate in their overall strategy a CSR component that's going to be working at creating a better society and not just looking at the financial returns on their investment, but certainly the social returns on their investment as well, which is a win-win for everybody in the end.
It definitely is. So congratulations to you and your team,
Thank you, Joe. I'll let them know.
Barita Foundation, as well as the Barita Investments and the Cornerstone Limited. Just for the work that you're doing, it is important work and definitely work that could, be expanded into different communities. And so I really want to thank you for joining me, for
Thank
sharing more
you.
about Barita Foundation, as well as your own personal insights in terms of how you deliver your services, deliver your interventions. And, here on Safer Tomorrow, I think what's very important for me in terms of the communication and the discussion is really helping people to recognize that we are all the same. And as different as we think we are, we're really all the same. And a lot of the processes that we have to go through to change, to become who we want to become or need to become, are very similar. And also just how important it is to learn to care. I mean, we're not all perfect at it. I certainly am not. But, we all can have that as a goal, just to care for the person who is right beside us or right in front of us. And that really would help to make the world a better place. So thank you again. And thank you,
Thank you.
listeners, viewers, for joining me. I mean, it was certainly a good conversation. And I know you would have gotten many insights and many food for and a lot of
I
food
hope
for
so.
thought, for the future and just for how we can operate. I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Say for Tomorrow Podcast. Also, follow us on our Instagram and Facebook pages, and that's Safer Tomorrow Pod. So that's Safer Tomorrow Pod. We really would like to hear from you. This is a conversation. It's not just about us sharing, but it's about hearing from you because there are actually many things I'm sure that you are doing that we can also learn from. So remember to like, share, subscribe, comment because we
Yes.
want to hear from you. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day.